I'm Corey Evan. Coming up in today's report. Putin tells Kiev to let troops surrender as the Ukraine ceasefire is shot to pieces. Obama's executive amnesty action is brought to a standstill by the Supreme Court. But the Dreamers, they're not going to take it sitting down. Oh no. Sony has come up with a product that could challenge Google Glass, even though Google Glass isn't exactly doing well itself. Today I bring you my first ever US-made segment, and I'll leave it to you to figure out what that's all about. An exonerated man has failed to count his blessings in lawsuits across America, and Geraldo Rivera loses the Celebrity Apprentice title to Lisa Gibbons. Sorry, Geraldo. But those are all coming up in today's Evan Miller Report, your conservative news source. Starting, how about now?
Live from Southern California, this is the Evan Miller Report. Jason Miller with news and politics. Corey Evan with business and entertainment. This is the Evan Miller Report on SHR Media and Pundit Press Radio. Here now, Corey Evan.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us for the Evan Miller Report on this Tuesday, February 17th, 2015. Jason Miller has the night off. I'm Corey Evan, and this is the first item I've got for you tonight. According to Reuters, Russian President Vladimir Putin told Kiev to let its soldiers surrender to pro-Russian rebels who spurned a ceasefire in eastern Ukraine and fought their way on Tuesday into the town of Debaltseve, encircling thousands of government troops. A peace deal reached at all-night talks in the Belarusian capital Minsk last week had all but unraveled, with both sides failing to begin pulling back heavy guns as required after the rebels refused to halt their advance. Putin, whom Western countries accuse of directing the rebel assault with Russian soldiers and weapons, said Kiev should allow its soldiers to surrender to the advancing rebels. Quote, I hope that the responsible figures in the Ukrainian leadership will not hinder soldiers in the Ukrainian army from putting down their weapons, Putin said. He added that he hoped the rebels would allow the Ukrainians to return to their families once they had surrendered the town. Reuters journalists near the snowbound front line said artillery rounds were rocking Debaltseve every 5 seconds, and black smoke was rising skywards as Grad rockets pounded the town. The rebels say the ceasefire announced last week does not apply at all to the main battlefront at Debaltseve, a railway hub in a pocket between the two main rebel-held areas. Quote, 80% of Debaltseve is already ours, said Edward Basurin, a rebel leader. A cleanup of the town is underway, unquote. He later said negotiations were underway for 5,000 Ukrainian troops to surrender. Hundreds had been captured and would eventually be released to their families. Ukraine denied that the number of captives was that high. Despite Putin's public call for a surrender, Russia sponsored a resolution adopted by the UN Security Council that called on all sides to implement the truce agreement, expressing grave concern at the violence. Putin was visiting Hungary on Tuesday, his first bilateral trip to an EU country since last July, when Moscow was left isolated after a Malaysian airliner was shot down over rebel-held territory with what Western countries say was a Russian-supplied missile. Hopes that the deal reached last Thursday would end a conflict that has killed more than 5,000 people were always low after a rebel advance in January ended an earlier truce. But Western countries appeared surprised that the rebels had refused even to pay lip service to the ceasefire at Debaltseve. Russia has already annexed Ukraine's Crimean Peninsula, and Western countries believe Putin's goal is to establish a frozen conflict in eastern Ukraine, gaining permanent leverage over a country of 45 million people seeking integration with Europe. Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko called the rebel assault on the town a cynical attack on the Minsk Agreement. Stay with us here at SHR Media. We will bring you updates on this story as soon as they become available. Over in Italy, according to Voice of America News, the beheadings of 21 Coptic Christians by Islamic militants on the Libyan shore of the Mediterranean, a short boat ride from Italy, has shaken Italians and is prompting a fierce debate in Rome about what Italy can do to quell the anarchy engulfing its former colony. Italians have watched with growing alarm for months the raging conflict in Libya between competing militias backing rival governments in Tripoli and Tobruk. The main consequence for Italy has been a rising flow of illegal immigrants, mainly from sub-Saharan Africa, attempting to cross the Mediterranean from the coast of Libya in rickety boats. Last week, more than 330 people are believed to have drowned making the crossing, and during the weekend off Sicily, the Italian Coast Guard rescued 2,000 immigrants traveling in 15 different boats. But now Italy worries that the rapid emergence of a jihadist group loyal to the so-called Islamic State spells new dangers, specifically that jihadists might gain access to Italy by posing as illegal immigrants. The black-clad masked executioners in the video posted Sunday on the internet, which authorities in Italy say is authentic, appeared to take pains to emphasize that Rome is indeed a target. On Twitter, accounts associated with ISIS posted links to the video carrying the title, "A Message Signed with Blood to the Nation of the Cross." All but one of the Coptic Christians slaughtered near the coastal town of Sirte were Egyptian migrant workers. In the video, the executioner-in-chief, speaking in accented English, points northward and says, "We will conquer Rome by Allah's permission." Shortly before the beheadings, Italy's defense minister Roberta Pinotti told Il Messaggero newspaper, "The risk is imminent. We cannot wait any longer. Italy has a national defense needs and cannot have a caliphate ruling across the shores from us." On Thursday, Italy's Prime Minister Matteo Renzi will present to Parliament a plan of action, but what he will propose remains unclear. At least 16 people were killed early Tuesday in the Haitian capital after a man on top of a musical group's carnival float was shocked by high-voltage wires above the street, setting off a panic in which dozens of people were trampled, officials said to ABC News. The accident occurred as thousands of people filled the streets of downtown Port-au-Prince for the raucous annual celebration. Video from the scene showed sparks coursing from the wire after a singer from the Haitian hip-hop group Barricade Crew was jolted by the overhead power line as the float passed beneath it. The cable appeared to have shocked several others as well. Prime Minister Evans Paul said 16 people were confirmed dead and 78 were injured. His statement conflicted with earlier reports on the number of casualties. Nadia Lockhart, a coordinator for the Department of Civil Protection, has said at least 20 people were killed. Paul declared 3 official days of mourning for the impoverished Caribbean country. Haitian officials canceled Tuesday's third and final day of carnival events and announced a state funeral and vigil on Saturday for the victims. The singer who was hit by the power cable, a man known by the stage name Phantom, was expected to survive, according to a doctor who spoke to radio station Zenith FM. The information could not be verified immediately. Video from the scene also shows Haitian ambulance crews racing through the crowds in the pre-dawn darkness with victims on stretchers. Hundreds of people crowded around the hospital carrying victims or looking for information about family and friends amid a chaotic scene. Some men and women wailed as people were declared dead and the hospital's morgue soon overflowed. Communications Minister Rothschild Francis said the government was working to assist victims. Coming back home, according to the Washington Times, a federal judge late Monday halted President Obama's deportation amnesty, ruling he overstepped his powers in trying to grant legal status and benefits and privileges to millions of illegal immigrants in a stunning decision that chides the president and throws the White House plans into disarray just a day before applications were to be accepted. The White House says it will appeal Judge Andrew S. Hanen's decision, but it's unclear whether the case could reach the Circuit Court in New Orleans or even the Supreme Court before Wednesday, which is when the Homeland Security Department had planned to begin accepting the first applications under the new amnesty. Homeland Security Secretary Jay Johnson said in a statement that he strongly disagrees with the decision. As a result of the ruling, his agency will not go ahead with plans to start accepting applications, as I mentioned. Johnson said the Department of Justice would indeed appeal. The Republican Party issued a statement praising the ruling and emphasizing the previous times Obama said he didn't have legal authority to act unilaterally on immigration. Quote, "He was right, the court agrees," said Ruth Guerra, a party spokeswoman. The judge's order allows states to go forward with their lawsuit. It puts on hold the deferred action for childhood arrivals and deferred action for parents of Americans and lawful permanent residents. Many of the activists who pushed Obama to take executive action were refusing to consider the judge's decision permanent and were pushing back by telling immigrants to go forward preparing to apply for the deportation deferrals and work permits. Lorella Prey-Lee, Director of Advocacy and Policy for United We Dream, said her group has been fielding a lot of questions about the impact of the decision. She said she saw the lawsuit as an effort by Republicans to send a chilling effect throughout the community so people don't come forward. The message the GOP is sending the community is not to wait, she said, but, quote, "We want to deport you." Well, Miss Prey-Lee, the term illegal ought to be the key word here. If they snuck into the country, they're putting their own legal status in jeopardy. Okay, so remember, there's a process that has been established and has been working for years to try and keep our country in order here. And don't forget, previous attempts at amnesty have all but entirely been a disaster. I mean, even Ronald Reagan had a little bit of trouble with it. Don't worry, we will keep an eye on this story and we'll bring you details as they become available. Next up, from the Detroit Free Press, 2 young boys were among the 4 people killed in a house fire early this morning in Hamtramck as firefighters were unable to reach them through the flames in upstairs bedrooms. Fire Chief Paul Wilkes said that children were among the victims, but would not say how many. WWJ Radio reported 2 of the 4 victims were children. Kimberly Smith Anderson said she knew the family killed in the fire and confirmed they had 2 boys. She heard about the tragedy and brought her son to the scene Tuesday morning to see whether it was true. Tony Howard Smith, age 12, said he played football with the 2 boys, one of whom was near his age. They went to Florida for a big football tournament. Smith Anderson said she'd gone shopping with the mother. The Wayne County Medical Examiner's office was on the scene mid-morning as the bodies were removed from the second-floor window down a ladder. Firefighters were called at about 1:50 a.m. to the house on Yaman Street, northwest of Caniff Avenue and Conant Street. They arrived to see the back of the 2-story structure fully engulfed. The identities of the people have not yet been confirmed, Wilkes said. It's unclear what started the fire, he said, and Detroit Fire Department has been helping his crews with the firefight as well as the investigation. He said the last fatal fire in Hamtramck was about 2 or 3 years ago. So to hear this story is rather disheartening, to be honest. I mean, you guys know where I go to church, and you know that we believe that all human life is precious, so to hear this kind of story, that family's certainly going to be in my prayers tonight. Moving on to New York, according to the AP, the tourism office of Ithaca, New York is waving the white flag on winter and advising visitors to its website to check out the Florida Keys instead. Visit Ithaca.com's homepage displays Sunshine State vacation photos and provides links to the website for tourism information about the Florida Keys and Key West. The top of the Ithaca page reads, "That's it. We surrender. Winter, you win." Key West, anyone? Referring to this ridiculously stupid winter, the Ithaca website suggests visiting the Florida Keys this week and returning when things thaw out. Ithaca and the rest of upstate New York have been in the grips of a snowy and brutally cold winter. The most recent cold snap sent temperatures plunging as low as 28 degrees below zero in the Adirondacks early Tuesday. Yet another item to add to our continuing battle against
the environmentalists.
Anyone in New York who still believes in global warming, well, just look out your window. That ought to help you. And finally, from PC World, before I send it to break, a story that advises you on how to get rid of viruses, but you're still going to have to get a new hard drive anyway. A cyber espionage group with a tool set similar to ones used by U.S. intelligence agencies has infiltrated key institutions in countries including Iran and Russia, utilizing a startlingly advanced form of malware that is impossible to remove once it's infected your PC. Kaspersky Lab released a report Monday that said the tools were created by the Equation Group, which it stopped short of linking to the U.S. National Security Agency. The tools, exploits, and malware used by the group, named after its penchant for encryption, have strong similarities with NSA techniques described in top-secret documents leaked in 2013. Countries hit the most by Equation include Iran, Russia, Pakistan, Afghanistan, India, and China. Targets in those countries included the military, telecommunications, embassies, government, research institutions, and Islamic scholars, Kaspersky said. Kaspersky's most striking finding is Equation's ability to infect the firmware of a hard drive or the low-level code that acts as an interface between hardware and software. Disk formatting and reinstalling the OS does not affect it, and the hidden storage sector remains. The Equation Group also used interdiction techniques similar to those used by the NSA in order to deliver malicious software to targets. In short, their recommendation is to simply destroy the hard drive. Yes, unfortunately, you're just going to have to reach for that sledgehammer and just bang away at it. As for your most personal information on there, hopefully you've backed it up. Right, let's go to break. When we come back, in our business report, Sony has a competing product for Google Glass. Will it fare any better? That's the question. I have 2 stories in favor of Made in the USA products. A man who is exonerated of murder charges has filed a $40 million lawsuit against Northwestern University and suggests to me that he forgot to count his blessings. And Geraldo Rivera loses the title of Celebrity Apprentice to Lisa Gibbons. Sorry, Geraldo, but that's just how the cookie crumbles. You're listening to the Evan Miller Report on SHR Media. Take 2 minutes, go get a cookie, and come on back.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Hello, I'm Paul, a student at Hillsdale College. Here is my professor, Dr. Larry Arnn, on the separation of church and state.
America's founders believed in the separation of church and state, in that the country was not to have an official religion or an official sect. But that did not mean that government was to be hostile to religion, or even indifferent to religion, as many today argue. In fact, America's founding document, the Declaration of Independence, includes both a reference to God as the author of the laws of nature and a confident assertion that human beings are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Far from being hostile or indifferent to religion, America's founders understood the theology of the Declaration to be an essential part of the education of citizens.
This Constitution Minute was brought to you by Hillsdale College. To join the national conversation on the Constitution, go to constitutionminute.org.
Most impressive Tuesday ever, but it's still a good one. I'm Corey Evan with your business report on the Evan Miller Report. The Dow is up 28 points at 18,047. The Nasdaq up 5 points at 4899, and the S&P 500 added 3 points at 2100. Bloomberg News tells me German investor confidence rose to the highest level in a year in February, buoyed by the imminent arrival of fresh central bank stimulus. The ZOO Center for European Economic Research in Mannheim said on Tuesday that its Index of Investor and Analyst Expectations, which aims to predict economic developments 6 months in advance, climbed to 53 from 48.4 in January. Economists had forecast an increase to 55, according to the median of 32 estimates in a Bloomberg News survey. Growth accelerated at the end of last year in Germany, the region's largest economy, helping the rest of the currency bloc to better than forecast output. With oil prices and the euro sinking, and the ECB scheduled to start quantitative easing next month, investors have stayed upbeat even as the mounting risk of a crisis in Greece threatens renewed turmoil. A gauge of the current situation climbed to 45.5 in February from 22.4 the previous month, ZOO said. A measure of expectations for the euro area rose to 52.7 from 45.2. The survey of 227 analysts was conducted from February 2nd to February 16th. The outlook remains clouded by the intensification of the Ukraine crisis and the collision course of Greece's new government, ZOO President Clemens Fust said in the report. Even so, ZOO economist Michael Schroeder said German investors are relatively sanguine on Greece. Greece's government has rejected the austerity terms of a bailout, posing the danger that it will be unable to finance itself. Negotiations in Brussels on Monday collapsed after Greek Finance Minister Yanis Varoufakis refused to meet European demands that his country request an extension of the program, which is due to expire on February 28th. And from CNET.com, Sony is making a pass at Google Glass, announcing that a developer edition of the Sony Smart Eyeglass high-tech specs are available to order now, and they're cheaper than Glass, even if they're nowhere near as elegant. The Smart Eyeglass Developer Edition is the first set of smart glasses from Sony to go on sale. They're available in March in the US, the UK, Germany, and Japan for $840, or £520, or €670, or 100,000 yen, or whatever it translates into in your local currency. And pre-orders are open today in the UK and Germany. They'll also be on sale to business customers in France, Italy, Spain, Belgium, the Netherlands, and Sweden. No Australian prices or details were announced, but the UK price converts to about $1,020 in Australia. Although there are plenty of high-tech eyewear alternatives, the Google Glass specs are the best known. Glass was one of the early devices that kick-started the trend for wearable tech, but earlier this year Google stopped selling it. Mainly because it cost $1,500 and was only available in limited numbers, it was never aimed at a mass audience. What's more, the camera-equipped device raised controversy over questions of privacy. Bars banned them, and wearers earned the nickname, Glass, which I would never want to earn that name for myself because I wear glasses, not just because I need them for eyesight correction, but also to identify who I am, so to be nicknamed one of those things, that's just insulting. I'm not going to get mad over it, but it is insulting. Because I know a lot of people who wear glasses, and that's not a name that we want. Right, that's your business report for today. I'll have another one for you tomorrow, as usual. But now, on to a new segment that I'm launching this week, called US Made. just in case you weren't able to figure out what US Made is all about, this is a segment where I focus on efforts to encourage manufacturing and jobs in the US. As I'm sure you're well aware, ladies and gentlemen, a lot of clothes that we wear these days tend to have tags on them that say made in China, made in Egypt, made in Honduras, made in El Salvador, made in wherever. But it's very rare when you find any clothing that's made in the USA. But this one from dailyfinance.com, the 2015 Mercedes-Benz Fashion Week, now underway in New York, brings attention to the best in American fashion and some it designed and made in the US. The U.S. imported $80 billion of clothing in the 12 months leading up to February 2014, the Office of Textiles and Apparel reports, and it exported $5.8 billion in clothing at the same time. But there are signs of more production in America. Manhattan's famous fashion district just released news that New York City is tripling its investment into Made in New York fashion. Across the country, the movement for locally hand-manufactured fashion, or slow fashion, has caught on since its inception in 2007. These designers and brands are just a few notable names growing American production and manufacturing. New Bedford, Massachusetts is the starting point for all of Joseph Aboud's suits. He was born in Massachusetts to a blue-collar Catholic Lebanese family that inspired him to work since he was 16. In 1986, his namesake brand launched, and he has since partnered with major chains like JCPenney and Macy's. Since then, the brand has evolved to champion the slow fashion movement. A champion of American manufacturing, Nanette Lepore, says 85% of its young feminine-inspired designs come from American production. The brand cites the lack of U.S. knitting mills and heavy costs to embellish and bead certain clothing as the reason it is not entirely manufactured stateside. Though the line has grown since its founding in 1992, the brand is proud to maintain relationships with its earliest East Village partners. And Nicole Miller has been a sign of the American waning and re-emerging fashion industry. In the 70s, the then P.J. Walsh brand became one of the first lines to move production to Hong Kong. In 1982, the brand had a change of heart to maintain a better quality control. CEO Bud Konheim said, quote, "It wasn't patriotism." And it wasn't. Moving any production back to the U.S. is certainly patriotism right there. Of course, this is just one example of stuff being made in the U.S. that actually puts a smile on my face, because fashion is an important industry. I mean, you can't go around naked. Stay with us here at the Evan Miller Report. I'll have another US-made segment next week. But in the meantime, it's time for lawsuits. Right, ladies and gentlemen, please be seated and come to order. Lawsuits across America for this Tuesday are now in session. First item on the docket comes to me from Reuters. A wrongfully convicted man filed a $40 million lawsuit on Tuesday against Northwestern University, a former journalism professor, a private investigator, and an attorney, accusing them of framing him for a double murder to get another man released. All Story Simon of Ohio claims in the lawsuit that he was the victim of unethical tactics by a team focused on freeing another man in what became a celebrated Illinois wrongful conviction case. Simon was in prison in 1999 after confessing to the 1982 murder of two people in a park, and spent more than 15 years behind bars before he was exonerated on October 30th, when prosecutors decided his confession was coerced. Another man, Anthony Porter, was originally convicted of the murders and sentenced to death, but was released after Simon's confession. Porter's release was an early victory for Innocence Project programs that work to overturn wrongful convictions. His and other cases eventually spurred Illinois to abolish the death penalty. I wouldn't go so far as to abolishing the death penalty altogether, but at any rate, as part of a Northwestern University investigative journalism class he taught in 1998, then Professor David Protess instructed his students to investigate Porter's case and find evidence of Porter's innocence, rather than to search for the truth, the lawsuit said. Okay, I'm going to stop right there because searching for evidence of Porter's innocence rather than searching for the truth? What, you're trying to find new ways to lie, Professor? I don't think students are quite qualified yet. Until they receive their degree and actually gain experience in the field, they can't make that sort of investigation happen. At least, it doesn't make sense to me. Uh-oh, our next item comes to us out of Ohio, according to Cleveland.com, and it's about sexual harassment.
Oh dear. Oh dear.
A Brimfield Township police officer has filed a lawsuit against former police chief David Oliver, who resigned last month amid allegations of misconduct. Officer Crystal Casterline accuses Oliver of sexually harassing her through inappropriate comments and unwanted touching. She further accuses him of retaliating by striking her in the throat and thigh and inventing arbitrary rules for her, according to the lawsuit filed Monday in Summit County Common Pleas Court. The lawsuit is seeking compensatory and punitive damages in excess of $25,000. Oliver abruptly resigned last month amid allegations of sexual harassment. The man who earned national notoriety through his candid takes on social media has since deactivated his popular Facebook account. Township trustees offered little comment about the allegations when they accepted Oliver's resignation. Trustees initially suspended Oliver for 2 weeks for an administrative policy violation, but the former police chief resigned days later. Oliver addressed the accusations in Facebook posts last month, referring to himself as a hugger. Well, Mr. Oliver, there is a difference between hugging and hugging. Get it? No? What a surprise. And finally, from the Journal and Courier, YMCA Camp Tecumseh can move to another county. Its lawsuit against the White County Commissioners under a Tuesday ruling by White Circuit Court Judge Robert Thacker. The judge ruled after a February 6th hearing in which attorneys for the camp, the commissioners, and hog farmer John Erickson made their respective cases on where the lawsuit should be heard. The White Camp in August 2013 filed suit in Carroll County challenging the White County Commissioners' vote to rezone 7 acres of land for Erickson's proposed 9,000 hog operation about a half mile from camp in Carroll County. The commissioners appealed to the Indiana Court of Appeals, which ruled the lawsuit should have been filed in White County where the zoning decisions had been made. The Indiana Supreme Court upheld the appellate court ruling and the case was sent to White County. Judge Thacker gave the attorneys 3 days to decide where the lawsuit will be moved. If no decision is reached, the judge ordered the attorneys to choose whether to move the lawsuit to Cass, Carroll, Tippecanoe, Benton, Jasper, or Pulaski counties. That's a pretty broad spread of Indiana to move a case to. They've got a lot of options. And while they consider their options, I will declare lawsuits across America for today case dismissed. And now on to entertainment, where Geraldo is conceding to Lisa. All along the latest Celebrity Apprentice season, Geraldo Rivera seemed to have a handle on the game, but when it came to the very end, it just wasn't enough. In their final challenge, Rivera and former E.T. anchor Lisa Gibbons were tasked with creating a 90-second commercial for Universal Resorts and selling vacation packages for as much money as possible. As usual, the two finalists would be judged on creativity, brand message, how much money they raised through the packages, and overall presentation. Rivera managed to raise a respectable $146,000 in vacay packages, but Gibbons threw it all out there and smoked him by raising $324,000. Gibbons, who had the help of eliminated contestants Kevin Jonas, Brandi Glanville, and Johnny Damon, centered her commercial on a story of a tightly wound father who eventually realizes that spontaneity would be the best way for his family to make the most of their trip. She was playing for her charity Care Connection, which helps people suffering from Alzheimer's. Meanwhile, Rivera, with the help of Ian Ziering, Vivica Fox, and Lorenzo Lamas, had a Harry Potter-inspired concept. He was playing for Life WORC, an organization that helps people with learning and mental disabilities. So while Geraldo didn't exactly win, at least he was playing for charity, and $146,000. It's not that bad. And next up, way to ruin my childhood, Mrs. Obama. Now, Michelle Obama is dancing with Big Bird.
You desperate guzzler of stagnant douchagua!
To mark the 5th anniversary of her Let's Move Healthy Living initiative for kids, the First Lady appears with a yellow-feathered friend from Sesame Street in an online video produced by the comedy site Funny or Die. The White House said the appearance is meant to promote greater consumption of fruits and vegetables by kids. The Funny or Die episode of Billy on the Street, hosted by comedian Bill Eichner, is shot in a Safeway grocery store produce section among displays of piled oranges, apples, and pears. Way to ruin my appetite, Mrs. Obama! Thanks a lot. I won't be watching the video, by the way. I just thought I'd let you guys know so you can avoid it at all costs. And as for you, Big Bird, don't be a bird brain. Get away from her. And finally, it's Academy Awards night. You're gathered with a large group of family and friends to watch the annual ceremony on TV. You have a pool going to see which of you is best at predicting winners. Your family and friends look at you and wonder how you could be so confident, category after category. Surely they knew that you were brilliant, just not this brilliant. At least that's the outcome that Tariq Khan over at Fox News' 411 entertainment section is hoping for her predictions in these categories. I'll post the full list on facebook.com/The Evan Miller Report. Right, that is your entertainment report for today. I hope to entertain you again tomorrow, and that is the Evan Miller Report for this Tuesday, February 17th, 2015. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, you'll be glad you did. For all of us here at the Evan Miller Report and SHR Media, I'm Corey Evans saying thank you very much for tuning in. I hope you'll tune in again tomorrow. Good night, everyone.